Independence Day from 1996, directed by Roland Emmerich, starring Will Smith, Bill Pullman, Jeff Goldblum, and a huge cast. Quick logline: if anybody's been living under a rock and doesn't know what this movie is about, the aliens are coming and their goal is to invade and destroy Earth. Fighting superior technology, mankind's best weapon is the will to survive. So we covered this episode on, I think, our America episode maybe a year or so ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting to kind of revisit this movie. I mean, obviously, I watched it many, many times. The seminal movie of anybody who grew up in the 90s. Like,
Yeah.
you cannot think about movies in Hollywood and blockbuster without this movie. But in the America episode, I was talking about the movie very specifically from America's point of view. And the good and the gray and the not so good, all of it is sort of covered in this movie. And it's in the text of the movie of, how
Mm-hmm.
America takes over for, again, the good or not so good at times. But this time I wanted to kind of put all that on the side and just look at this as a movie and obviously as a Will Smith vehicle. And I mean, this movie is super entertaining. It ages really well. It was incredible, especially at a young age, to watch a movie like this where landmarks that you know of in your life are being blown up. And yes, the CGI doesn't live to current standards, although in some ways I would say maybe it does, because some of the alien stuff is actually pretty cool. It's kind of practical and tactile. But yeah, as a kid, you just never seen anything like this on screen before. But I think the secret weapon of the movie, apart from we'll get to the star, is that this director and the script, they make you believe these relationships. So you're invested, whatever is happening across the board. So then when you are fighting the aliens, you can't help but root for the people and root for the world, and you're caught up, and it all leads up to the big speech, which I think is probably one of the best speeches. It's corny, but it works, and this movie is a good old time. It delivers, and those are my thoughts on the movie.
Yeah, interesting note on that speech. They put that in to the movie just so they could make Fox call it Independence Day, because originally they didn't want to call it that. They had to pay
I heard
money to
about
get
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, so I actually yes, the movie was inescapable for sure in that time period. As a kid, this movie just didn't work for me. I didn't get what it was doing. I thought it
Mm,
was too cheesy and like not. It did not enthrall me. It was fine. I loved Will Smith in it, which we'll get to that. But it didn't really work on me much as it did for all my friends who were like, "Oh, we saw it like 3 times or whatever." I was like, I don't know, it's kind of dumb. But over the years, I kind of got okay. It's doing that sort of Irwin Allen disaster movie kind of throwback
mhm.
of, yeah, it's supposed to be corny and cheesy, and it's supposed to be about all these interpersonal drama, like you said. I mean, that was the key of Irwin Allen, who's a producer of like Tower Inferno,
Right.
Poseidon Adventure, all these big disaster movies of the 70s, and they were about just interpersonal relationships set in the context of a disaster. It wasn't so much about the disaster itself, because the alien invasion thing is super kind of simplistic, and it's not really about the aliens as much as it's
No.
about, like you said, the people. So that over the years, this film has aged well for me personally. I can kind of take it as what it is. I think it's a really fun, 90s popcorn blockbuster for sure that holds your attention, and the special effects hold up really well. I think it was a lot of due to the model work they used instead of a lot of that early CGI. But yeah, so I can enjoy the movie now. I can take it for what it is, and I think it's definitely a classic of 90s popcorn cinema for sure.
Like the way Jaws probably started the summer blockbuster movie, I feel like this
Hmm.
movie, Independence Day, is seminal in that kind of journey on evolution of summer blockbusters. And this is definitely, for me and our generation, that movie.
For sure.
But this movie, it would still be amazing and entertaining for what it is and what it's trying to be if Will Smith was not in it. But
Hmm.
he is probably the central figure of this movie. Like, this movie is not what it would be without him. I think this is where you just cannot. I still remember this watching as a teenager, and like you were saying earlier, right? Like wanting to be with this guy, wanting to be this guy. He's just so cool.
Hmm.
I'll use the word charm machine yet again. Everything feels so effortless, improvised. All his scenes with Jeff Goldblum are amazing. Even though I don't know how much of this character is on the page, but I think it's because Will Smith is bringing who he is to the
Hmm.
movie. It feels like a fully fleshed out person. And I think that's what's kind of great about this movie across the board. Every little part feels like a fully fleshed out person, which is not something you would expect from a movie like this. This is why it's kind of a lightning in a bottle movie, because hell, they've made many such movies after. In fact, this director has made so many movies after this movie, and none
Yeah.
of them really get to that place because of the relationships and the characters and what have you. But Will is absolutely amazing. That whole scene of him dragging the concussed alien to the
Yeah.
desert, I mean, it's a one man show
Yeah.
essentially. He just carries the whole movie, looks incredible, great physical comedy. The whole spectrum of emotions and what you expect from a movie star is all there. And I was thinking about that. Like, we all saw the birth of a movie star. That doesn't happen very often. And we saw it with him.
Yeah, I think his character is really key in this movie in that, yeah, it's about an alien invasion. So there's a lot of like very serious, melodramatic. I mean, all the Bill Pullman stuff is like supposed to be taken incredibly seriously, and the aliens
Yeah.
are coming and I was celebrating our Independence Day, all this stuff. And you need this element of, I don't want to say like mocking the movie because it's definitely not that, but like sort of commenting of, yeah, like, oh, welcome to Earth, like punch the alien in the face. Like this stuff that's
Mhm.
sort of like a little bit fun and gimmicky. I kind of liken it to like Han Solo in the original Star Wars was that character that
Mhm.
sort of like popped the balloon of self-seriousness that movie. Oh,
That's a
the
good
Force, all this
comparison.
stuff. It's like, okay, in this movie, Will Smith is that character. And I think in these, especially these big sci-fi action movies, they can sometimes get a little too overly self-serious. And I think that's a criticism I can land on a lot of these other Roland Emmerich movies, Day After Tomorrow, 2012 that you were mentioning. There isn't that Will
Mhm.
Smith character who's there that is just sort of like, oh yeah, like Welcome to Earth, drag the alien, making all these jokes, but not at like the movie's expense, sort of at his own expense, and the banter that he has with Jeff Goldblum and the spaceship at the end, and all
Mhm.
this kind of stuff is sort of that energy that a movie like this needs to have that extra layer just to make it boom. Now, like it's a cultural phenomenon. I think Will is that crucial ingredient. Yes, it's an
Mhm.
ensemble cast, and he's not the star of the movie. I think this is
He's actually
on a
on
lot
the
of people's
movie a
shoulders.
lot, but you think he's in the entire movie
I
because he's
know.
just so impactful.
Yeah, yeah. I think then the reason why, I mean, a lot of reasons why the sequel to this movie that came out like, 12 years later or whatever
Yeah,
was
just a bad
terrible.
idea to begin
But
with.
the missing element of that, there wasn't a Will Smith character in
Yeah.
it. They didn't even try to replace him. They killed him off screen. It was really dumb. But without that energy, I'm like, oh, actually, like Independence Day, it wasn't really about the alien invasion plot line or the cool effects. Yeah, that stuff was great. But what made it really push it over the edge was Will, honestly. And not having that in the sequel made it more evident how important he is as an ingredient in this movie. He really, I mean, yeah, like after this, it was. I mean, again, I knew him, like I said, but here I was like, okay, but this guy's like a movie star because I hadn't seen Bad Boys, which came out before this, that kind of
Hmm.
cemented him as someone who could carry movies. I hadn't seen it when I saw Independence Day because I was too young. But yeah, this is definitely his star making turn for sure. I think the world, was like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
He's so cool.
Yeah, the fun is there, like you said, and in that sense, he kind of becomes the audience surrogate in a way because he's the one who's kind of real with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you put yourself in this situation, it would be scary, but it would also be kind of laughable in a weird way. I
Right.
mean, you're laughing out of being shit scared,
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
and that's what he's doing. So you're doing that with him. So he becomes the audience surrogate.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's why later when he's getting in the plane and going, you actually want him to be okay.
Right.
That's the thing. Like, yes, the earth is falling apart and the stakes are super high, but what ultimately connects you to believing that the stakes are super high is the people, and
Mm-hmm.
you want him to be safe. And so, but it's not just him. I mean, he's obviously a crucial ingredient. I do think Bill Pullman is amazing. Like,
Yeah, he
he did
is.
a
Yeah.
great job
Yeah.
of him. He's kind of wormy and doesn't really know what he's doing up front, and then he has a great arc of kind of figuring it out and takes matters in his own hands and wants to fly the plane. And Mae Whitman, the daughter, is great. So it's like a great ensemble piece. But yeah, Will by far outshines.
Yeah, I think the movie would have been a hit without
Yeah,
Will and that character, but it made it into a phenomenon and a
yeah,
classic because of that Will Smith ingredient, for sure.
totally.
Hi there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I review a new release and then discuss 6 other movies made by that film's actor or director and how they shaped us. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.